Hey guys, welcome back to the next tutorial. In today's session, we're going to be talking about lists in Python. So today I'll cover off with you what are lists, how do we use lists, how do you modify a list, more specifically, how do you add an item to a list, how do you remove items from it, and how do you modify a list. And then eventually when we get into looping, I'll also talk to you about how to loop through a list as well. But we're going to perform some very common functions with lists, but really I want you to get the basic understanding of what a list is and how it's set up, and how can you do some simple math and some simple algorithms and some very simple commands with lists as well. So let's get into it. So, you may be asking, first of all, in Python, what exactly is a list? Well, a list is really no different than, you going to the grocery store and, you're going to go and buy some bananas and you're going to buy water and, you're going to buy, I don't know, what else are you going to buy? You're going to buy some apples and oranges and whatever it is. So you're going to have this entire list that's going to get created with all these different items in there. And, a list for you when you go grocery shopping serves its purpose, and that is you really walk through your list and you check off what you've bought. A list in Python is a very similar concept. And really, if you think about it, or if I were to explain it to you, a list, by definition, it's really a collection which has an order to it, and it's also changeable. Lists also allow duplicate values and duplicate members as well. So why don't we just create a very simple list? Let me talk to you about some of the syntax with a list. So a list is denoted with these square brackets in Python. So whenever I say something like, you don't want to use a reserved word like list. That is a reserved word, so you don't want to use that, which is why it's underlined. But let's say we just use a similar concept and we'll say grocery list. And so now that I have these open brackets, I can go in here and I can enter a whole bunch of things. So I can say, I have apples, I have bananas, and let's say I also have water. And you know what, just for fun, we'll say, hey, listen, I got a phone call to get some more apples as well. So we'll add that back onto the list. And we'll add a fifth item. Why don't we just say some gum as well? So now I've basically got a grocery list. So this is the equivalent of me writing down a list on a piece of paper and taking this to the grocery store with me. Now in Python, if I want to call this list, it's very similar to how you would call a variable, and that is you use a print function. So you say print, and then you say grocery list, and then you hit the run button, and down here you see it will actually show you your list of items here. Now lists also have something called indices, and what that means is that when I want to access an item, a list is configured in a way so that the first item always has the index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So I can actually go ahead, and if I wanted to just print apples, I would say I want to print this list with an index of 0, and it's only going to return the first item, which is apples. Say I wanted to print out water, so I'm going to go 0, 1, 2, and when I do 2, I can go and it'll tell me that my list item is water. Now we're also going to go through lists in more detail, especially when we go through looping, and that's where a lot of this is going to come together. But really in this tutorial I want to help you understand some of the basics around lists. Now let's say that in this grocery cart or in this shopping list I wanted to change the bananas, and I decided last minute I don't want to get bananas, I want to get cherries instead. You can actually rename items in a list. So list items are actually changeable. Even though they have an order, they are changeable. I can now say today grocery list index 2 is referred to as water, but we want to change banana, so let's go back and change that to 1. And so just to show you, this should print out bananas for us. Let's see what that looks like. So when I hit print, I get bananas. But now I say, you know what, I don't want bananas anymore. I just want to get cherries. I can rename that and just hit equals cherries. And now what this is going to do is this is going to say, all right, in index position 1, I'm going to remove bananas, and I'm going to rename this index item, which is bananas, to cherries. So now when I go ahead and print, when I print my grocery list, it should show us apples, cherries, water, apples, and gum. So when I run this, apples, cherries, water, apples, and gum. Exactly as we thought. Now let's say that I also have this list, and let's say this list has, 100 items in there. and I don't remember whether or not I've actually put water on my list or not. I can actually go through this and see whether or not there's apples. Now for that, we're going to use an if statement. I will go ahead and show you how to do it, but we'll go into if statements as well in a future tutorial. But if you've ever used an if statement in Python or in any other programming language, it's actually very similar. If not, I find it's easier. But we're going to walk through the if statement as if we're actually telling a story. So it's really intuitive in Python. So I can say something like, let's say I want to see whether or not this list, so I remove the modification. Let me go back and add it in there. So we do want to keep the cherries in there. Now, let's say that in this list, I don't know whether or not I have water in there. Water is essential. Everybody needs it, right? So I can actually say if water in grocery list. So all I'm saying is tell me whether or not there's water in grocery list or not. Now, when I write a statement like this, if water in grocery list, this is also basically saying that if water is in grocery list is equal to true, it's always going to default to that. Then tell me whether or not, so we're going to say print yes, water is in there, else print this item is not in the list. So I'm going to just take out water. I'm going to say, let's say yes, item is in there. So now when I actually say, all right, I want to run this statement and let's see what it says. So technically, water is in the grocery list, so it should print this statement. So let's print it. And it says, yes, item is in there. Now, what if I said, I want to see if there's mineral water? So I'm saying, if mineral water is in the grocery list, print yes, item is in there. Otherwise, this item is not in the list. Now it's showing this item is not in the list. So you can actually iterate through a list itself using an if statement, and we can also get into loops and all that stuff later on as well. Now here's another cool function in Python, and that is, let's say I do have a whole bunch of items here, and I don't want to go in there and count how many items are in my grocery list. You can actually print a function called len, and what len stands for is length. So I can say print open bracket, and I could say len, and so what len is going to do is it's going to count all the items in the grocery list. So I can say grocery list. So we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items in the grocery list, and it's going to give us 5 items in the grocery list. Let's see, I added pizza, and I've also added cheese. Alright, so now it should in theory give me 7. So I've got 7 items in the list. And so len is actually a very, very useful function as well, because let's say I wanted to know the length of the list, and I actually want to call the last item in the list. I can say print grocery list, and I can say len grocery list. Now, what do you guys think this is going to return? Do you actually think it's going to return something or not? So let's see. It actually is going to say list index is out of range. Why? Well, the reason is, remember, your index always starts at 0. So if I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 items in there, your index is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you always want to do len minus 1. So that's basically saying take the 7 and subtract it by 1, give me the index 6, which is cheese, which is right there. Now another way to call this item in the list is actually just to say grocery list index minus 1. And that is the equivalent of the statement we just had before, and you see it included cheese. If I do minus 2, it should give me pizza. There you go. So it's the equivalent of actually taking your list length minus that number. And that is what this minus function is all about. Now, let's say I wanted to just pull water, apples, and gum. So I want to pull index item 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I need index item 2, 3, and 4. How do you think you do that? You can actually write a range. So I can say between 2, and we said 2, 3, and 4, right? So what do you think this is actually going to print? In theory, we're thinking it's going to present water, apples, and gum, because water is indexed 2, apples 3, and gum is 4. Let's see what it does. It's only actually pulled water and apples. And the reason why it's only pulled water and apples is this last number that you define in your range is not included in the list. So what this is saying is print 2 and everything up to, but not including 4. So it's actually printing 2 and 3. If we wanted to get water, apples, and gum, you would go 2 to 5. Now it's going to say print 2 and everything up to 5, but not including 5. And that would give us the 3. Water, apples, and gum. Now let's say I wanted to add another item to this list. So I've got apples, bananas, water, all this stuff. Let's say I want to add blueberries. All right, so now we're going to use the append function. So we're going to say grocery list dot append, and we're going to pass through blueberries. All right, so now we're going to hit print. It's going to show nothing, and that's because I forgot to print the function. So we're going to say print grocery list, and now it's going to say apples, cherries, water, apples again, gum, pizza, cheese, and blueberries. Now again, what if I wanted to get the length of my new grocery list? I do len, close that bracket off, and now it'll say I have 8 items. And again, if we wanted to pull blueberries as the index, remember, it's going to be, because we know blueberry is at the end, grocery list -1. And now we get blueberries right at the end. All right, so this is now our new list. Now let's say I wanted to add another item, and I wanted to add cereal. But however, because of the way the aisles are set up, it makes sense for me to buy water, which is the next aisle over to the cereal, for whatever reason. Cereal right in between water and apples here. So that is the index item 0, 1, 2, and I want the third one to be cereal. How do I do that? So in this scenario, we would call our grocery list item again, or grocery list again. I would say dot insert the index item, and then I can say cereal. And now when I reprint this again, it should give me apples, cherries, water, cereal, and then apples again. Let's see what it does. Apples, cherries, water, cereal, apples, gum, pizza, cheese, blueberry. So it actually did what we wanted it to do. And if I wanted to remove an item, it would be very similar. So I would now just call this function, and I would say remove, and let's remove gum. Interestingly enough, since gum is a unique item, I actually don't have to call the index. It'll just know to remove gum from the list. And then we're going to reprint this. So when I reprint this list item, it should tell me that, okay, gum is gone from the list. And that is because we forgot to call the remove. Gum is no longer part of that index, so we're down 1 item. Now I have 2 items here, apples and apples. What if I wanted to remove the first one? How do I do that? I can say delete grocery list, and I can say I want to delete the first item in that list, print it, and now the first apple is gone. Now we're left with cherries, water, cereal, apples, pizza, cheese, blueberries. There's also some other functions in Python. There's actually something called pop. What pop will do is it'll actually remove the last item in the list. So when I say grocery list dot pop and I print grocery list, it should now remove blueberries. And when I reprint it, blueberries is gone. So there's actually other methods as well of the list function. However, I will paste them right here, and I will add these for you guys in the description as well. But essentially, you have the append, which we've used, which adds an element to the list. Clear will remove all the items from the list, so you just go grocery list.clear. If you want to copy a list, you just basically say grocery list 2, like something like grocery list 2 is equal to grocery list dot copy, and it'll copy this entire list and put it into there. And if I wanted to just print grocery list 2 for demonstration purposes, you notice that I just copied the list right there, so it's actually list 2. I can count the number of elements within a specified value. You can extend it, add elements to a list. So there's a whole bunch of different things you can do. I encourage you to just start playing with some of this stuff. Lists are fairly straightforward and easy to go through. Sorting a list is actually a really cool feature as well. And that especially becomes important when you're doing numerical analysis. For example, you want to remove the top 10% and bottom 10%. You can easily say, remove out of a list of 100, remove the bottom 10 and top 10. All right, so here's the exercise. It's back to school. Kids are going back to school. And so now they need to buy school supplies. So I'm going to name off about 10 different items that kids are going to need for school. Okay, so they're going to need pens. I'll just comment this all at the end. You're going to need pens, paper, a backpack, pencil case, binders, What else do kids buy nowadays? A geometry set, sharpener, lead pencil, lead, erasers, and that's your 10 items. So here's what I want you to do. Step number 1, I want you to create a list and then print out the function as such. I wanted to say, here are your items on your list, followed by, then I actually want you to have your list here. So that's step number 1. Step number 2, you get a call from your son or daughter and they say, hey, listen, mom, dad, I also need for you to buy me a hole punch. I want you to add the hole punch to the list and then print out the exact same statement here and do this. Next is you get a call back and you say, hey, listen, I have a whole bunch of lead, so I don't need the lead, so I want you to go on and delete lead. And then finally, this is something I didn't teach you, but it's something I think you guys can pick up. I want you to sort your item alphabetically. And then I want you to copy your list twice because you have 2 kids. And then name each list your kid's name. It's going to be for kid 1, print items, print the first half of the items. And then for your second kid, for kid 2, print the second half of the items. Now guys, if you can't do this in one shot, don't worry about it. It's not, lists are sometimes tricky to learn, but the key thing is I want you to try. So give this a shot, see where you get, post your comments, your questions, your concerns, your issues in the actual comment section, and I will try my best to respond, but at the same time, at some point, I'll have an answer back for you guys as well. So hopefully you enjoyed this quick introduction to lists, and we will cover this topic off in a lot more detail when we get into looping and functions. Until then, please consider liking, subscribing, and please comment. Thanks. Bye.